Good evening. Good evening, fun-filled crowd of folks tonight. Welcome to the work session and special meeting of City of Laramie. Sorry, let me just make sure my phone is off. Work session, Tuesday, April 28th, 2026 at 6 p.m. We will get this started tonight with public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? None in the room? Anything online? Okay. Moving on, we have 3 work sessions tonight, and so we will start one work session, take public comment, then close that and move on to the next. And the first work session that we have is the Nedlog property update, and we have folks here. Who's introducing this? Am I just bringing up folks from the EPA? Or all right, whoever would like to come up and join us, we would love to have you.
That's right, thank you. You'd think I'd be used to that by now. My name's Craig Myers. I'm an on-scene coordinator with EPA's response program out of Denver. Apologize for my voice. Hopefully it gets along okay with your closed captioning. There's going to be a few of us presenting different parts of this as we go through it, different kind of work focuses that we have. We just wanted to give you an update of what we're planning to do at the former Nedlog property. Involves some kind of immediate cleanup, some other assessment work that's going to be going on, and I guess we'll just launch into this. Maybe. First off, for introductions, I introduced myself. I'm Craig Myers. We've also been working with the Department of Environmental Quality. PJ's here in the audience. If there's questions for the state after this, he's here to answer those. We're also working with Ben Lucky and Cindy Martinez with the Department of Environmental Quality. And then Abby Hasenstab is here. She'll be talking to you a little bit about our cleanup plans. And Justin Blayler's here. He'll be talking about some of the assessment. And then we have a community involvement person whose contact information will be up here as well. His name is Brent Campbell. He's not here tonight. I'm going to go through kind of the roles and responsibilities of the different agencies, kind of real brief, just kind of how we got here, operational history, and that kind of stuff of the facility. Real brief of kind of previous assessments and kind of what got us to today, and then kind of our cleanup actions that we have planned, plus then the upcoming assessment work. And we'll kind of take questions after that. A lot of this started through the state's DEQ program. There was a voluntary cleanup program, conducted some sampling, some targeted removal of different wastes, industrial wastes, different asbestos, parts of the build materials, and then they'll ultimately end up taking over long-term oversight of the property. EPA's role here is kind of three pieces. Initially was a site assessment that goes through that data feeds a lot of different EPA federal programs, and it's really EPA's first look, kind of first cut of the assessment of the property. Brownfields is a specific cleanup program that's meant for kind of lightly contaminated properties to bring things back into beneficial use for the community, kind of rejuvenation of a lightly contaminated property. The last little bit is the program that Abby and I work for. That's the response program, and we're really intended to be a program that addresses short-term, real, immediate, acute risks, and we're intended to be fairly surgical and narrow in scope to handle kind of the worst of any given problem. And we're really, in this case, we're focused on source removal, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Operationally, this started operation in about 1940. The 1940s. It was a wartime plant, produced alumina. It went from there into producing aggregate for kind of the construction industry, and then most recently, late 70s into about 1990. they were working on some different metals extractions. They were bringing mine wastes of various sources, smelter waste, waste ore, and that kind of things onto the property to try to reprocess them and to extract metals. That's really kind of why we're here talking tonight. Where we're talking about, this is the Nedlog property. It is a couple miles south of here, near the cement plant. I'm sure most of you know where that's at. Timeline, I think this is Abby.
Talk about it, yeah. So, Nedlog has quite a history of involvement with EPA and the state. Initially, how EPA began learning about this is that around the 80s, it was noted that there were quite a few RCRA violations when the property was still active. When it was still under Williams Strategic Metals and Nedlog Property, LC Holdings, all sorts of different names underneath that. And then around 2001, those RCRA violations kind of got on top of them, and the company proclaimed bankruptcy, and it sat vacant for a while. The property went into a trust, and so then it sat there. Around 2011, EPA returned to the site and did a preliminary assessment of saying, okay, we went through bankruptcy, we did a couple of closures, and what is still remaining at the property. So then between 2011 to about 2019, a couple people who were entrusted with the property went through the voluntary remediation program and did some flue dust removal. They emptied out some tanks that were still within the buildings on site. They did some asbestos abatement and dealt with a couple of piles that were still at the site and a couple other various random things, flushing out pipes and such like that. Obviously, that did not address all of the contamination that remains at the site. It's a really long history, and it's a lot of contamination widespread throughout the site. So then in about 2020, they ran out of funding, and COVID also halted work. They lost their contractor. And so Wyoming DEQ requested EPA Brownfields to take another look at this site and say, here's everything that's been done before. Where are we at now? So they conducted a phase 1 assessment and gave her that report, and we decided that EPA had grounds for one more removal action. That was to remove some hazardous waste that was in containers on the site and secure anything that was immediately accessible to the public for people who maybe trespass on the site, which it's a very common site for trespassing. We also constructed some fencing around the property, put up some signage, and tried to secure as many entrances as possible. Obviously, it's not a perfect solution, but we did as much as we could to deter the public from trespassing on the site. And then that kind of brings us to now. We did a little bit more assessment in 2024, and we have information from about 2022 to 2024 indicating that there are arsenic levels super high in a certain portion of one of the buildings on the site, and there is still some remaining contamination of mercury in one of the other buildings, which I'll kind of get into detail more later. And that's going to be the focus of our removal action from the response section side. And then we also have another portion of this where site assessment will be dealing with things kind of outside of the property boundary. Is there a groundwater plume and has it impacted drinking water wells nearby? Is the airborne dust from the contaminated soil getting off-site and migrating? That's kind of Justin's area of expertise. So that kind of brings us to the now. Okay, so I did mention this 2023-2024 assessment activities, and this is what leads us to the point of we're going to do another removal action at the site as EPA, the response section. We did some background air monitoring, we did indoor mercury vapor monitoring, and we also did some asbestos sampling and some heavy metals perimeter sampling. And inside the buildings, we also did some XRF sampling, which XRF is X-ray fluorescence. It tells you field screenings of heavy metals that are present in floor dust, soil. Sometimes it can do water, but we were aiming for floor dust and soil primarily. We also did that chemical inventory and hazard categorization of those unknown chemicals. Those have since been disposed of off-site from the 2024 removal action. And then we also did some geotechnical and boundary surveys to identify any target areas that would need further assessment for the piles that were stored in the open field area on the site away from the building, and just to define actually what the property boundary is. It's been a bit of a point of contention in the past. So yeah, like I said, that 2024 removal was really ideally to secure the site and dispose of any hazardous materials on site. There were some containers. There were about 260 containers that we disposed of and brought off site. And yeah, we did some fence installation. We boarded up some windows, and we moved some dirt piles in front of like the main entrances. There is still, since we've been back at the site a couple times, there is still evidence of trespassing, so it's not exactly secure. So next steps. Where are we at now with this project? We are planning to do a site inspection in August. That's something Justin can talk about a little bit more. The removal action is targeted to start May 11th, and we're anticipating it to last about 6 to 7 weeks for us to complete our removal action on the arsenic contaminated areas of the building. And then we did have a public meeting over the winter, this past winter, and if necessary, we will have another public meeting if public interest is piqued and there is a request for it, either from the city or the state, or something interesting happens at the site, you know. So I'll turn this over to Justin so we can talk about site inspection.
Thank you, Abby. Again, my name is Justin. I work in the site assessment program at EPA. And yeah, sorry, we just had a little bit of change of dates since I sent you the presentation. But so they're doing a removal action in the near future. So I just wanted to make sure we pushed it out, our part of it, far enough out, not as to not step on their toes. But basically, what I'm looking at, to reiterate what Abby said, is basically, you know, we know there's contamination on the site, but is it getting off site? And that's mainly through soil, like dust, or historically it could also be through a smokestack emissions, which there was one there. And then also through groundwater. And I know a lot of folks in that area don't, you know, rely on city water, so there isn't, you know, many threats as far as folks drinking the water, but we do know there are some drinking water wells that still exist there, whether it's for irrigation or gardens and things. That's something that we're looking into, and we'll hopefully take some samples of those just to be safe. So this is just an image of the sampling locations that we intend to, where we intend to collect some samples. A bunch along the eastern side of the site. And wind, my understanding is that wind generally in this area moves to the northeast, so our sampling spread reflects that. So basically taking some samples to the southwest is essentially what we're identifying or potentially identifying as a background area. What we would see is natural conditions, natural levels of arsenic and other metals, to basically be able to compare, okay, this is what it's naturally in this area, and then if we see it on the site or downwind of the site at higher levels, then we can basically connect the dots. So this is just an example of where we plan to sample when it comes to soil samples. And I guess just for folks to get an idea of what that looks like, it's pretty simple. Using a trowel, we also use an X-ray fluorescent gun or X-ray fluorescent device to essentially screen the soil and get a sense of where there are higher levels of contaminants, and then focus on those areas to be conservative. So we use that and then essentially just take a trowel, dig up some soil, mix it around, homogenize it is the word we use, and then put those into sample jars and send those to the lab. So yeah, I think that's it for this slide. And then the other thing I mentioned was drinking water samples. So these are, on the left there are points that we intend on collecting samples of, domestic wells. As Abby mentioned, we know there's contamination both in soil and in groundwater on the site. There were monitoring wells installed there a couple of years ago, and we know that there's significant groundwater contamination there. And so this is essentially an effort just to see if that's migrated to any of these other wells off the site. So just as the picture on the right indicates, it's basically just filling up bottles at the tap. And I'll be working with residents. I've already started to reach out to some folks about just notifying them and giving them some information, asking for access. But we'll be, the community involvement coordinator and I will be coming out in mid-May, May 13th and 14th, to go door to door to the folks that we'd like to collect samples at, just because I haven't gotten in touch with all of them yet. And so, we'll definitely be sure to work with them closely and make sure that we're only going to places where we're given access. So that's our intention as far as that goes. And then I'll give it back to Abby for this part.
Okay, so this is kind of the big meat and potatoes of why we're here. This is our anticipated removal action that will be occurring beginning May 11th and lasting for about 6 to 7 weeks. So what we do know is that there are accumulated volumes in the floor dust and on equipment remaining inside of building B1. I wish I had a laser pointer that would point at it, but B1, and then that red box there, that is where we've identified that arsenic concentrations are the highest. 510,000 parts per million, which is about 50% concentrations in that process dust in that northeast corner of that building. And so that's where we're targeting our removal action. And how this is going to work is a bit of a unique situation. So we'll go into that building and basically wash the building. It's going to be a water-centric cleanup. We're going to target the equipment that's remaining in there and remove any movable equipment outside of the building after it's been washed. And after it's been deemed clean, it can go off for recycling. If it's still dirty, then it will be disposed of as hazardous waste. And then that wash water that washes off the walls, gets all of the dust off of there, it's obviously going to be contaminated with arsenic and other heavy metals. So we'll be collecting all of that through a drain system and then using a sump pump to get it into a collection frac tank basically, and then it'll go through a filtration system. So we have filter bags that we'll be using and seeing if that is effective by doing pre-treatment sampling and post-treatment sampling, sending that off for lab analysis and seeing how effective our treatment is. If our treatment isn't effective for one reason or another, then we will add some more elements to that treatment train, whether that be chemical treatment or reverse osmosis treatment, any of the such. And then we do also have target cleanup levels that we've spoke about with the state and come to an agreement upon about what we're going to try and aim to get that water to in terms of cleanup levels. So then once that water is thoroughly cleaned and it's met the levels that the state and us have discussed, then we do have the intention of doing a land application within the property boundary of that water, not to surface water. It wouldn't be discharged to a ditch. It would just be discharged to a flat area of land, soak into the first top 6 inches of the soil, and that would kind of be the bulk of the work. Once that water starts coming back clean, we do some confirmation sampling with either activity-based sampling, wipe sampling, grid sampling, or any type of anything that we find ends up working. That will kind of tell us that we've met our endpoint. And then another anticipated removal action that we are planning on doing It doesn't have a start date yet. It's in its very early stages. We still need some additional assessment, but what we do know in that other red box on that image there is building B5. Historically, there is a lot of mercury contamination in that building. We do have one sample there from our Lumex, which is our mercury vapor monitor, that basically gave us a max concentration that the instrument can read at. So very high levels of mercury contamination in that building. We'll be doing some additional assessment in and around that building and in the soil around that building this summer to identify really what that extent of that mercury contamination is, and then deciding how we're going to respond to that via a removal action. Once we know more about that, there will be more information, but in the meantime, that's just, we plan additional assessment for that over the summer. Okay. This is our contact information for Wyoming DEQ and US EPA. For public outreach, I would definitely say contact Brent Campbell. For technical outreach, Justin, Craig, and myself are good outreach partners. And then PJ and Ben, they're the kind of identified project managers for this project through the DEQ. So there it is. And then these slides, do these slides get handed out afterwards?
Yeah, they all come in the electronic packet.
You guys got it. Cool. Okay. So yeah, I guess now we're ready for questions.
Great. Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Abigail, and your team. Has anything else been in those properties since they closed? Has any other businesses occupied those since '01 or what have you?
No.
No?
No.
Can I follow up?
Yeah.
Since it's so close,
Oh, sorry to interrupt. The concrete
Sorry,
company
will you come forward for just a, sorry, so that people online can hear you?
I was just going to say, the cement plant did lease the property, and they stored aggregate and a bunch of stuff there for a long time. But no, no people, as far as I know. They just piled aggregate and stuff.
okay. How does this affect Mountain Cement since it's next to it and their employees being exposed possibly to these chemicals?
Yeah, so Justin's site assessment will definitely help answer those questions. At this time, we haven't done a whole lot of off-site sampling, so it's really hard to say at this point. So I'd say Justin's sample results will ultimately answer that question.
I'll just add that I've been working closely with them. I actually just met with them the other day, and we got a signed access agreement because their property wraps around to some of the areas that we wanted to sample. So we've been working closely with them. They came to the public meeting in December, and they're really aware of what we're working on. So, yeah, hopefully they'll, yep.
Add a little more, I'm sorry. And they are really aware. That's kind of what started this whole thing is way back when DEQ was in the Hirschler building and stuff. I mean, this was probably way 2010, 2011. They were actually considering buying that property, and that's what kind of started everything when they were looking at the phase 1 and phase 2s, and then that's when the kind of the past history and stuff popped up, and then they saw the, you know, red flags and this stuff, and they kind of just politely said, well, we'll wait till it's cleaned up or something later. But their high capacity wells that they have there is actually probably contributed to the migration of keeping stuff near the site as far as the groundwater portion not going the direction that you would assume because they're pulling so much water that way. And also with the constituents of just normal concrete and the base of, you know, makeup of that, I mean, it's a good place really to put arsenic if it's going to end up somewhere, be in the concrete. So, thank you.
Councillor Shumway.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. First of all, is the property within the city limits?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Okay. The other question is you've talked about removal to an off-site location. Is that within the county, within the state, or where's the or is there several locations?
That's undetermined at this point. It'll be a licensed facility. So for the water treatment waste, the solids that come out of that are almost certainly going to be hazardous waste. That'll probably go out of the state because there's no hazardous waste disposal facilities in the state of Wyoming. Other solid waste, there's a circular approval process that has to happen. So I think it's to be determined. We don't know yet. And all of those kind of circular approval processes are things that the facility would opt into. It's both through the state permitting processes and then we call it off-site rule approval. They go through a series of checks to make sure the facility is in compliance with a litany of environmental laws, both at the state and federal level. If I had a crystal ball, it would be it's more than likely going to a facility in Colorado, but I don't know. Some of that's going to be discussions with the DEQ, and as we know more specifics about what that waste stream actually looks like. Because right now we think we have an idea, but we won't really know until we go through the washing process to really know the chemical makeup and the physical makeup of the waste stream. So I think it's the best thing I can say after that long-winded answer is it's to be determined. I don't know if that answers your question, sir.
Councilor Bowling?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you all. This is a really wonderful information, not wonderful information, sorry, wrong choice of words, but I am curious, the 260 odd containers removed during the spring of 2024, what were the contents of those for my own edification? And then the second thing I wanted to ask, is there an ultimate plan through EPA Brownfield, perhaps with the property owner, perhaps with the county, for ultimately removal of these buildings? And if that is the case, does that present an additional environmental hazard?
See if I can catch all of those pieces. Abby can correct me if I'm wrong on the containers. The 260 containers, there was a laboratory on site, and so a lot of that was leftover small containers of chemicals that were part of that laboratory operation. There were some things, there was some mercury. I would have to go back through and look at specifics, but it was a pretty wide-ranging variety of chemicals. It was all leftover stuff from the laboratory. The long-term cleanup plans, the assessment that both Justin's doing and some of the additional assessment that Abby talked about is all going to feed into that. A lot of that is also to be determined once we have a more complete picture of the kind of current snapshot of the site, and that is kind of up to future discussions between EPA, different EPA programs and programs of the DEQ for that kind of long-term disposition. I feel like I missed the middle one you asked.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really helpful. It was just about ultimately removing the buildings on site.
Okay, yeah, and that's the biggest piece is, once we have a more complete snapshot, if EPA has a role in that, or if that's strictly DEQ, or if there's some other programs that might be helpful, of help in that situation. But the first step is the assessment. I think that's also kind of to be determined.
Yeah, and I think just adding to that, I mean, I think we intend to, have a public meeting later this year, and hopefully by that point we'll have, I'll have data from the sampling event, and the removal folks will also have data and results from their action. So we should have a lot more information by the end of the year, I would suspect, about kind of what the next steps look like.
Councilor O'Doherty.
I just wanted to say, since it's outside the city and you didn't really have any obligation to us, I know this was just, you were willing to share this information, and I'm really grateful to both of your agencies. And I know people like to demonize the EPA, but this is why we have an EPA, because it's not stuff that any organization could take on otherwise. And it's really convenient when companies can come somewhere, pollute it, and then just go bankrupt, and there's no responsibility. So we need to have this ability to restore things. Thank you.
Just kind of along those lines, so if I remember reading correctly, this property is now under the jurisdiction of the state, so it's not really, is that correct?
So technically, this property is in a trust under LC Holdings.
Okay.
And we do have a primary contact for the site who gives us access to the property. But he's been working with DEQ for several years, since about 2011 now, under that voluntary remediation program, using any of that funding that's left in that trust to do remediation to the extent that the trust money would allow him and to his ability. So yeah, and then that funding gets exhausted, and then EPA gets involved after that, so.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
then-
Oh, sorry.
One more thing I want to add, I think this is kind of relevant to a lot of the questions that have been asked. If you guys have any other questions about maybe historical activities or that EPA has performed, we do have a response website, response.epa.gov. That has all of our properties, all of our old projects on it. If you look up under Region 8, our region, NEDLOG property will be under there. It'll be under NEDLOG property, and then the NEDLOG arsenic removal action will be on there as well. That'll detail the events that we'll be doing this summer in May. Just good, helpful historical information.
Thank you. City Manager.
I'd like to echo the council's comments about thanking you for the work you're doing and coming in and seeing us. The one question that I have related is there any scenario between either organization where we will see these buildings removed from the landscape and taken off the prairie and remediated back to what it looked like?
I'm going to defer to DEQ on that question.
I would love to tell you, yes, that would happen, and it may. But as you guys know, legislature hasn't really been handing out a lot of money to any of us. And same thing on the feds, the EPA is getting cut left and right too. So, I mean, they are scraping together just to get stuff to help us at this point too. So, I mean, really it's going to come down to the higher ups eventually to put some more money together to be able to do that stuff. Because, I mean, I'm sure to take down all those buildings and haul that stuff away would be millions of dollars and stuff. So right now, none of us, I think, have the money to do that. But yeah, in the future, something surely could happen, or, you know, funding could come together, but it's not feasible at this time.
All right, anything else from council? Any public comment? And thank you all so much for that information. It was great. Public comment on this agenda item. Oh, great. Thank you. Who is? All right, Sue, if you can turn on your camera and come in the room, we welcome you to comment on this topic.
Mayor, or Vice Mayor, Sue is showing that there's been 2 declines to join as a panelist. Although the hand is raised, I'm not sure. Sue, I'm going to try one more time to send you an invitation to become a panelist. If you could accept that, it may be, there we go.
Great. And then Sue, are you able to turn on your camera? All right. Sue, we are not able to see or hear you. So I'm going to give you just a minute more to, oh, your microphone's off now. Can you get your camera on? Ah, perfect.
I believe it has started.
There we go. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My only question was whether or not the cleanup remediation would be finished before Jubilee days, since there will be a lot more traffic in that area at that time.
Thank you for the question, Sue. Jubilee Days is the second week of July, typically.
Activity-wise, 6 to 7 weeks from May 11th will put us out at about late June 22nd-ish. It's not expected to go much longer. There may be some assessment activities happening, but not large construction activities, minor sampling activities.
So you probably wouldn't be real noticed, you all, in the area.
The noticeable work should be complete by then.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Other public comment? Right. Thank you all so much for joining us, for taking the time to travel and be with us again. As Councilor O'Doherty said, this is just more of interest, and we appreciate the work you're doing and recognize that as the city, we're just kind of watching and cheering you on and thanking you for the work. So thank you. Appreciate that. And we will close that session. And we will next move on to our next work session. Oh, and before I do that, I just want to note that the mayor is not here because she is ill tonight. So sorry I didn't make a note of that at the beginning. And she wishes she could be here. So second work session, we've closed that one. And moving on to citywide parking task force development. Welcome, City Manager.
Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight to start to begin the work of what's coming up in fiscal year 28. As we identified this, one of the things that we had identified was the creation of a City of Laramie parking task force to evaluate and assess current parking conditions, any changes to regulations, enforcement, and ideas that we should have around changing parking, the status of parking in our community. As we all know, I could go, let's see if I can, there we go. The success for any task force requires a well-defined scope, an appropriate duration time, and the proper composition of members of that task force. The well-defined scope, I think maybe we've all been part of task force or committees that you're like, hey, why are we meeting? What's happening? What are we actually working on? And for us, it's extremely important to be able to look at the task force and define the scope. When we originally devised this and talked about it at a previous council meeting, we talked about a citywide parking task force. And I don't oftentimes mean to recommend against something that we have recommended, but that's a big scope. We've got a lot of parking issues. There's no doubt that there's a multitude of issues that we should look at, from parking in the downtown to the UW residential interface, what to do with RVs or parking in front of public spaces, all the pieces in ordinance. It's just a very voluminous area to address. And there's no doubt that they all need some address at a certain point. But as we embark on a first task force, it's important for us to think about the scope. The other thing to consider when you say citywide parking task force, and although the airport is a large part of that, it's about 18 square miles of parking to think about when we're talking about all the effects that we're working on as we move through there. My recommendation for this group, or for the establishment of a resolution that you'll see in the future, is that we look to focus on one area of the initial task force scope. We could look at downtown. We could look at the UW residential interface. Now, as you all know, we have a new president coming into the University of Wyoming that starts in July. It might be best if we hold off on addressing that UW interface parking task force until we have a new president in place and see what their take is and how we move through. We could even address RV parking or some other residential parts of parking that we like. But my recommendation to you, and this is meant to be interactive, this is where we're going to get interactive, is to talk about the scope and see if this council is amenable to identifying just one specific scope, or if you would like us to address two specific scopes as we move through this task force. So I'm going to stop there and look for some discussion.
I don't think anybody would have anything to say. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, City Manager Fieser. I had brought up some topics on parking. I think downtown's perfect. That's a huge, huge issue I think we have that people talk about quite often. UW, of course. I do find that the RV parking on the street and the boats and the snowmobile trailers has become a nuisance, but I think right now we can put that aside and focus on one or two of these other, I think, are more important at this point, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councilor Lockhart. Anybody else have any comments, Jim?
Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. I think downtown is a crucial area. It's a economic driver for our community. It's sometimes the first thing people from out of town see. So I think continuing to figure out the best way to manage that is a priority for me. And I think from what we hear from a lot of our constituents, and I would say, being in Ward 2, that UW interface is a high priority, and I constantly hear about. Those parking issues. And I guess I'll say to that is maybe July is a perfect timeline as we start trying to tackle this thing and a new president coming in. And I think we have some bargaining chips, and specifically from Traffic Safety Commission, I think the university, as they look at their plan and how they want to grow, assuming the new president would be on the same page, I mean, I think, the city has a real opportunity to work with them. And as they want to, manage their public transit system on like Bradley Street, I think we might have some ideas to help what we want to do and what we want to see for parking. So I don't know if that timeline coincides with this task force, but I think those are what you've highlighted are great areas.
Councilor Behill.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would agree with Councilor Freed. I think we would be wise to wait until the new administration starts. A lot can change between now and then even after July, of course. So, I think if I were a new president, I would appreciate the opportunity to kind of have a say and, share any vision that I might have for that. I don't want to speak for him, but that's what I would want.
And to be clear, we'll talk about timeline here in just a little bit. There is that onboarding for a new president, right? Is what's immediately going to be on his plate, which is a lot. I've witnessed that just in the past 4 months that I've been on a new timeline, right? And so there is some question about that. I do understand. As I'm listening to you, I think what I'll do is I'll craft up the resolution where initially we're going to focus on the downtown. Give that UW president some time to get his feet on the ground, see if he's ready or interested, or having his staff get involved with us to address some of the UW interface. Not too long ago, we had actually had a meeting with UW and they had an interest in providing the enforcement in the UW interface. And at that time, we had a different makeup, a different composition of our law enforcement. There wasn't a real interest in that, but we may be able to find some way to combine those sources, those energies, and not have that major impact on everybody. So I'm probably going to, if I don't see any big head nods or anything recommending against it, I'm going to focus on downtown and then move in to address the UW interface when it works with the president.
Councilor Doherty.
I like that idea, and I also would really urge our fellow councilors to look at the old, because we have beaten this dead horse for a long time, that our staff has made more parking downtown, has made a lot of diagonal parking, and so we had a lot of public meetings, and so maybe I could ask the clerk to try to consolidate those, like when we've had those sessions, so people know where to look, because we're not very good at looking at the website, like those public meetings about parking downtown. I think it would be really helpful for the rest of council and myself to review those, to hear those ideas again. And I also know that some people are brave about coming before council, and others are not so much, because they have to live with their neighbors downtown that maybe aren't good business neighbors about not taking up parking spaces. So it's not real fair to put those people on the spot. So if you could review those before we dig too deep. Thanks.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Doherty. That made me think too. And when I was looking at this, you just kind of, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, and so that's maybe just echoing your point, is understanding kind of in the last decade plus, 2 decades, city manager, if there's a way, if that city clerk providing that information to us, or like a couple slides of what we've tried, from staff's perspective, what was effective, what was not, where we heard feedback. I think that will be helpful to catch some of us up to speed who might not have, been around for that long or know all those things.
Absolutely.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I've made this suggestion more than once, and I'll do it one more time for the future. Obviously, the campus, the University of Wyoming, is defined, and they're very good at selling parking permits, having parking garage, having outlying lots where they, transport people in. They have a plan to move students, staff, faculty, et cetera. However, the residential parking of the city of Laramie is impacted significantly by students, faculty, and staff that take all the spaces the residential are hoping to use for themselves, because the faculty, staff, and students do not want to pay these parking passes. And so I've proposed in the past, and it's never got much traction, to have a donut, 3 or 4 block donut, which is for resident parking only, and they get permits to park there, but students, faculty, and staff cannot park there without having a residence within that donut. Now, that would solve a lot of the problems for our residents, and every now and then they come in and ask us for a solution. We have just never found a solution. And to me, I would think, the campus is defined. Maybe we need to have our residents defined with a 3 or 4 block donut that says this is for the city of Laramie residents. Anyway, that's something to think about in the future. If it's possible to do something to give them relief, that'd be great. If not, I guess we just continue on doing what we've been doing.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else thoughts on this far? Okay.
Great. Thank you, Counselor Shumway. So a lot of times we talk about duration. I know a lot of us have all served on committees or on task force where the scope's too little and the duration's too long, the duration's too short, or the scope's too voluminous to try to get this done. I have to tell you that even just if we address just downtown, it's a voluminous scope. It's a lot to absorb. So I am proposing that my recommendation is that we establish a task force, we establish a resolution, we get this fired up, and we begin with 1 meeting a month in September, October, and November. In December, we report back to the City Council with the findings, what we've heard, where we've had our impacts, what we've done, and then we do 1 meeting a month in January and February. We assess the findings, and we come back with recommended changes to the parking structure on the scope areas that we've talked about. My whole intent is for this to line up with the fiscal year 28 budget, and that's what I'm intending. It's a big scope, and as Councilor Shumway said, there's been lots of things recommended. We've implemented a lot of great things, but we really haven't, quote unquote, found that right solution that fits everybody or that everybody can tolerate. And that's the hope, is that we take the time, we have the right scope, and we get there. So this is where I'd be happy to hear about the duration from you folks.
Anyone?
Yes. Perfect. Okay.
Councilor Newman.
It's great. Like you're saying, like I'm sure all of us have been on some sort of committee and task force, and the scope of work is a year, and we have 3 months to work on it, or vice versa, right? And I think this would be whoever is on the task force, if we got the information of here's what we've done in the past, right? Because I know since I've been on council, I think we've tried a few things. So if we can get people up to where we are now, and then give them, the 3 months, and then nothing's saying in January and February that we can't have 2 meetings if we need to, right? So I think this is a great idea.
Okay. I love it when a plan comes together.
It's done.
So then the final thing is all about the proper composition of the makeup. And quite frankly, this is where you see a lot of task forces fail. You get too heavy on the organizational side or too light on the structure, or whichever the piece is. As I looked back at this, I think this composition requires at least 2 council members to be part of. It really does, and that provides some framework and some stability. Then you think about staff participation, and parking really affects a lot of areas. We have engineering, we have community economic development, who's recently been working on a downtown plan that I heard about parking. You've got the city manager's office, you've got the police department, you've got the effects of parking and changes that might affect fire service and things that go on. And so there's a large composition of what we need from staff participation. Then, of course, we have organizational participation. If you're talking about the interface with the University of Wyoming, there's one big organization to interface with. But if you think about downtown, we've got the DDA, the Laramie Main Street Alliance. We've got the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance as it affects businesses as we move through, and we need to think about who we want to invite to be from an organizational participation standpoint. And then finally, the community participation is vital. You have to have folks that are not only using, but are affected, that receive benefit from that, but people that are using that parking so that they can access the businesses they want. The other hard part is you're trying to make a nimble task force that can meet regularly and get done and have everybody attend these meetings. And so you got to be cautious about how large you get. When I look at this, and when I first started envisioning this a couple weeks ago, is I was up to 17, 18 members. I don't know that we can do that. So we really have to be cautious about what we're doing. What I'm hoping for you guys tonight is that you can identify, if you think 2 council members is the right number, if you think the 4 people from staff is the right number, what kind of organizational participation you would like to see, and then what kind of community participation you would like to see as we move through.
Great. Thoughts on this? Councilor Lockhart.
Well, I want to be on the committee, so I'm on the task force, so sign me up for that. You knew I'd say yes to that. I forgot to say thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
You're so welcome.
I think for staff people, I think you hit the nail on the head with the organizational, DDA, LCBA, LMSA, and then community. I think, maybe a couple downtown business owners, and then of course people that frequent down there, and I don't know how you would pick those, so that one would be the hardest, I think, out of them. We could ask people that own businesses downtown if they'd be interested, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Lockhart. If I actually run the numbers, if we have 2 council members, 4 staff members, 3 organizational participants, and then 4 community participants, that's 13, which is maybe a manageable level for once a month meeting. We've got the spaces to handle those. We can get out, we can actually tour. We can, the once a month meetings might just be for the staff. Then we've got listening sessions from stakeholders and other folks that are going to have to come in and provide the response, and so that more people have a chance to do that input as we move through.
Councilor Fried.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thanks, City Manager. This is a pretty small task, I guess, to get underway. In my head, just running the numbers, I thought 4 staff, 4 organization, 4 community, and 2 council people. That's 14. Maybe that's too many. But I think there's no matter what, we're gonna hear from a lot of people who aren't included in that group. So I know we've talked about survey death, and maybe that's not the correct way to catch the other folks' information. But I guess I'm also concerned with how we're gonna choose different community participation or business owners downtown. And I don't know if there's a random way to do it, or we can try to get an effective diverse population. But over 10 is usually what I would say is too much. 14 seems like a lot, but that feels like the minimum for those organizations that you're talking about.
Correct. And one organization, which is one of our boards and commissions, it's the Traffic Safety Commission, right, has a strong input on what we might be doing in these areas. So there's more. So I think it's important. One of the things that I would ask is I've got a relative feel for the number. I kind of felt where it was going. I appreciate your guys' trust in the numbers that I put out there. But what I would be looking for council to do is also make recommendations of folks that they would like to see on these task force. Who from those organizations, what representatives, so that we can start reaching out and get their buy-in. As we move forward, does anybody else have anything on composition?
Yep, we have a couple.
Okay.
Councilor Newman.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I like the idea of an even number too. So that's kind of what I wrote down was 14. I also said that I would be on it if nobody else would. Just with youth council and everything ending, I kind of have some more free time. So, and then I think the organizational part of it, I think if we, I wouldn't want to just like pick one person from the organization, right? Because I personally don't know a whole lot of some of those members. So I think inviting the organization to like, hey, like we need a liaison from you would probably be, and just in my opinion, the better, because maybe they have somebody who is already working on this, and we pick somebody who maybe doesn't want anything to do with it, right? Those kinds of things. So those would be my recommendations.
Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. Just wondering, in terms of, you know, considering that the meetings wouldn't start till September, October, November, you know, if there's a way that we can push an opportunity for community participation or getting people who are interested in that through our summer events like Farmers Market, 4th of July, et cetera. So something to consider. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Bowling. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think this ad hoc committee that's being proposed would be great because they will be the ones that prepare the agenda, move the agenda, and also look at all the possible solutions. I think that there will be a large group of individuals that have interest, but much like we have city council meetings, they will be invited to participate with, you know, at appropriate time as public comment to that committee, so that there's not 50 voices, but there's only the 14 that go through the discussion and then have input from them at the appropriate time.
I appreciate that.
And I actually have a little bit different thought on the organizational participation, because when I'm thinking of community participation, I'm thinking of businesses downtown, which will take a chunk, but we also have residents who are downtown. So if we had to reduce the numbers, I would eliminate the organizational participation, oh my gosh, participation, and up the community participation. I think that, and maybe they would say differently, but I think having those direct voices who are most impacted downtown is, that would be the change that I would make. But if it works with the numbers, having organizations there as well, it's great.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. As you think about it, you know, we've kind of talked about downtown almost specifically as a scope. As we move to another scope at the university, it's a different group of folks, right? You've got different residences, you've got different organizations, different businesses that are all in effect. And so that's one of the reasons that I've really tried to guide this to get there. And I do apologize. I hope this doesn't feel like it's a slow process, but I'm a slow and Eddie. You know, if you're super steady, you get the worm, right? If you hurry in there, the worm squirms away, right? So that's kind of my process and the way I work.
That brings one more question to my mind. Does it make sense, if we're waiting for the new university president to kind of get his feet wet, get settled in, to have one task force that is more focused on downtown, some of those community members or the organizational participation shifts when it goes to, like, maybe some of the same players, the council and the staff are consistent, but it shifts on those other two parts as the focus of the parking spaces or areas change?
Yeah, and if I could respond to that, Vice Mayor, the concern I have about two task forces is staff time, right? Now you're doubling the amount of time that staff's working on this, and I'll tell you that the staff top to bottom is stretched pretty thin right now. That's one of the reasons. Really, my recommendation is that we scope and we work on downtown, get some success, get something implemented, then hit the university interface with a secondary task force, and then we can start to talk about those other areas, and hopefully this process leads to a few years of success as we move forward.
Great, thank you. Oh, Councilor Newman.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but we've talked about it a couple times. So when we do the UW neighborhood area, which kind of like Councilor Freed, I get phone calls all the time. I think some of the community or organizational partnership with, or participation with that needs to be some of the traveling nurses, because it seems like those I hear a lot just because of my wife, but trying to find some parking just for those guys, because sometimes, they're parking 10, 12 blocks away just to go see some people in those neighborhoods. Inviting some of those guys would be great in at least that area.
Absolutely.
Other thoughts, questions?
Councilor Bowling still has his hand raised.
Oh, Councilor Bowling, do you still have, do you have another question, or is your hand still up from before?
It was just up from before. Thank you, Vice Mayor, and my apologies.
Oh, no problem.
So the final part of this presentation was about the next steps. I think it's important that council does a formal resolution establishing the task force, the scope, the timeline, the composition. And so over the next couple of months, staff's work is going to be able to do that. I would look for council through that resolution to identify the councilors. Right now, Councilor Lockhart and Councilor Newman have volunteered to be on the task force. Happy to have that if that's the council wishes. We'll go through that at the resolution time. But that's what you'll see next, is a resolution that establishes this and sets us up and gets us going, so that we know that it meets the council goal that's going to be coming. Hopefully you'll be approving those next week, and then we'll get moving from there. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
If anybody else is super jazzed about being on the task force, you can throw your name in the hat or draw straws. So, Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and City Manager. Just want to say thanks for the approach. I think, parking is something that I've heard about as long as I've been in Laramie, and so I do appreciate this, like, slow and steady and being thoughtful and measured. I think is especially if as Councilor Doherty said earlier too, how many times that we've tried to address and made some really good improvements with some of the construction in one of our first meetings where you walked me around downtown, and every parking space we can add in these projects and how we operate it is really incredible. So I think just going slow and being measured is how we're going to make real progress at last. So I appreciate that approach. Thank you.
Anyone else? Great. Thank you so much for really focusing in on this, and hopefully we can find a really successful, or at least baby steps forward. Maybe it won't be like a giant all-encompassing, but make some progress toward it. So thank you very much. Public comment on this agenda item. Come on up. Welcome, and if you could state your name, that'd be great.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Vice Mayor and Honorable Council. I wasn't going to say anything at all tonight, but listening to this discussion, one little point that... Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. You know my voice, don't you? Yeah, I'm Nancy Sindelar, and I'm active with this. One thing, the Traffic Safety Commission has, working with the engineer, we have made changes downtown that I don't think have directly been into city council minutes, so looking at those two when you're looking at the previous things that have been done, I just thought I'd throw that in there. And the other thing, this is more from the 40,000 foot level, looking at parking, is using like the bus or non-motorized other ways of getting downtown or without bringing your car with you, to look at the higher level, not just worry about where we're putting the cars, but how are we getting people moving around, and add that to your task force. Thank you. You want me to sign in, Nance?
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on this item? Anybody? Oh, Susan.
I was going to assign Director Webb to this task force so that we had one more year.
Oh, perfect. Come on up. Welcome, Ms. Martindale. If you'll state your name.
I'm Joan Martindale, and I own a business downtown, and I'm really excited to have a task force to try to figure out downtown parking. I have worked downtown minus 10 years since 1978, and it is still the same. So I'm hoping we can come up with some kind of resolution. And I appreciate all of your time, everybody who volunteers, because personally, it's really hard for me to do that. So I just want to let everyone know, kudos to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience or online? Okay. Oh.
We have Jamie Egolf online.
Very good. Welcome, Jamie. If you could turn on your camera and your microphone, we'd sure appreciate it. Oh, we are thinking maybe you are here for the water presentation instead, or do you have comment on the parking?
Well, actually both, but can I start with parking and then after the water presentation, I'll come back on?
Perfect. Yes, that sounds great.
So I had a recent injury, and so I'm using a cane and having a lot of difficulty walking around. And I now appreciate what handicapped people have had to go through for so long. And my comment just has to do with hoping that there can be more handicap access downtown. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you.
Right. Anyone else online for this? Nancy?
No other hands raised.
Great. And last time in the audience, see, I knew if we waited long enough. Come on up.
I became inspired. There's a friend echoing in my head. Speak, say something. Hi, I'm Brett Ralston, Ward 3. I'm from a big city, Seattle. Parking is a nightmare there all the time, so I'm excited to see some sort of task force that is going to be addressing this. I mentioned before, I'm a big advocate of access to things, and I think downtown is something that should be accessible to the residents of Laramie. It's important for our livelihoods and enjoying the city as it is. To echo a sentiment that was mentioned earlier about different perspectives for how we get people downtown, because including more parking spaces kind of maybe inherently means more traffic of cars. If the access for the cars to go there is there, then there might be more traffic in that 2nd Street area, 1st Street area. That could be, I don't want to say an annoyance, it's just something that would happen with the increase of parking spaces. So if there's some part of the task force that looks at maybe improving bike ways to get downtown, improving transit infrastructure, things like that, I don't know, that sounds like it's out of the scope, and I think I've seen maybe some sort of ideas elsewhere, but I just wanted to bring that up for my friend's sake and just for other people who enjoy walking around downtown and biking there and things like that. So there's more ways to get people downtown than just increasing parking spaces. In the big city, I also do remember, I feel like I was just there, just visited, a lot of places will have like business-only parking spaces. I don't see that a lot downtown. Maybe I'm not downtown enough, but maybe that's something that works well for bigger cities, like only, Cold Creek business employees can park at this spot, or only Bonds Brewing people can park at this spot, but I don't know, just that's my 2 cents, so thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, last chance. All right. We will close public comment on this agenda item. Thanks everyone for the input, and thank you City Manager for pulling that all together and giving us a direction forward. Last work session, water planning, where we are, what's unknown, and what's ahead. And it looks like a couple of y'all are going to be presenting maybe to us, but starting with Director Webb. Welcome.
Mayor, Council, good evening. I'm going to do the bulk of the presenting, but I brought lots of backup. It's just the right button, right? Nance?
Yeah.
Nance? Okay, thanks. So the Laramie Water Availability Plan, we've been hearing in the community, people are worried about water availability this summer, and and rightly so. We've had, as you know, high temperatures, not much moisture. We were hoping that the moisture we got the last few days would pull us out of it, but not even close. So here we are. The water availability plan is really an internal operational plan that gives our operators, our water operators, the ability to pivot during operations and provide potable water in the most efficient way. The plan is a working document that's currently being updated based on our water availability predictions for this year. The plan talks to protecting a shared resource, and that protection and conservation ensures a reliable water source now and into the future. We're safeguarding the Casper Aquifer and the Laramie River watershed and reducing non-essential demand during shortage conditions. No, you're right. I'll just point it at you. The purpose or goal of the plan is to reduce water demand when we have low water supply due to drought, and identifies some triggers during drought or supply shortfall, and what our responses will be. And we'll get into that a little bit. There we go. So determining a water shortfall, we don't just use one data point, or we don't just look at the river and say, oh, there's not much water there. There's a lot of factors that go into play. We develop monthly forecasts of supply. We compare supply against historic demand. We look at weather patterns, adequacy of supply over the projected dry period. And then we implement drought response actions as necessary. Both surface water and groundwater sources are assessed together to produce the most efficient supply and outlet possible. So I think everybody knows our critical season is May 1st to October 1st. We're approximately 250% demand increase in water production during that time period. That's, of course, when we have the highest demand and the lowest supply. So that's when we're really watching things closely. Drought mitigating factors, just some basic information here. Consecutive dry years reduce aquifer recharge and diminish surface water flows in the Laramie River. It's always interesting to me that the drought can cause flooding issues because the ground is so dry that it doesn't necessarily absorb the water and can cause contaminants to travel into the water supply through that runoff. Some of the other factors that we have in water availability sometimes is wildfires. A few years ago when we had the fires up in the mountain, that next spring runoff, we had a lot of issues out at the plant with treating that water because of the ash and the materials in the water, and that caused a higher demand on the well fields. This chart was kind of interesting to me. The darker line represents the 2016 to 2025 river flows. So you can see there that through like February and March, everything's frozen on the mountain, right? That's our storage. It's being stored in the freezer, if you will. This year, the lighter line there shows that the freezer broke down in February, and water started coming off the hill. This only goes through April 15th. That's when we pulled the data from. But as what you see is on that lighter line now, that's actually coming back down already. And so the flows on the river are starting to decrease already, which isn't great. I just wanted to note, this data is from a stream gauge that's located upstream of the water treatment plant. So it's not the one here in town. That's not what we monitor. We monitor above the water treatment plant, so we know what's at the water treatment plant. The flow coming into the water treatment plant is much different than it is here in town because there's a lot of diversions between here and there. Just showing temperature trends. 2026 You can see there 38% warmer than last year. For across every month was warmer. And then we've got 2002 in there because that was the last time that we really had an issue with water supply in the river, and we had some pretty serious drought conditions then. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. As far as precipitation, 2026, 2025, 2022 up there, you can see that we're well below average this year. I think that's common knowledge, and we're actually even lower than we were in 2002 when we had those other issues. So this was pulled on April 15th. The Medicine Bow Range and South Laramie Range was at 25% of the snow water equivalent. We looked at that data this morning, and it's at 13% today, or this morning. So when the river can't be utilized, drought or lack of viable river water, flooding, wildfire, debris, contamination events. So it's not just drought. Our water availability plan literally addresses all water availability issues. There could be a plethora of reasons why we can't pull water from the river, and we've got to pull from using the wells. So our overarching goal tonight is to let folks know that they don't need to panic this year, but conservation really matters. We will have adequate water supply this year. We're not going to run out of water. If the river goes dry, we have wells to pump from. We have well fields. But conservation is key, because if we have this same weather pattern over the next few years and we're pulling that additional water from the aquifer, it's going to be hard for it to recharge, to come back, to bounce back for us. So really going to be concentrating on conservation this year, but we really don't want people to panic. There's going to be water, but there will be conservation efforts in place. I'm going to go on because I think I cover some of this in the next few slides. Some of the stuff we've actually done over the past couple decades to improve our water capacity and distribution efforts are some big projects. We put in the new raw water intake that is upriver of the Pioneer Canal. So if the river has water, the plant has water. That intake, we lowered the level of the intake to where, I mean, we'll be sucking mud out of there. Previously, we were above, I want to say we were 2 feet over, and so if the water was 2 feet, it was flowing by the intake. The lower intake now, we can capture every drop of water in there. And that improved our hydraulic grade line because it's upstream. Another big project we did was the East Side Tank Project, 1 million gallons of additional capacity in the system. Multiple pump station improvements, new PRV stations have been added, and standby power supplies. Couple other projects. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it on here because it's easier for me to see too. The wet well project at the water treatment plant added 187,000 gallons of capacity in the clear well at the water treatment plant. South Laramie Water Project, increased distribution system capacity south of I-80, additional PRV stations installed. And then you're probably all familiar with the 1 million gallon Zone 3 North Tank Project that we completed last year. So just a quick high-level overview on water production and water rights. Again, we're saying supply is available. If you look back at 2002, when we had restrictions in place, in August, the water treatment plant was not operating, but we were supplying we've supplied 310 million gallons of water to the community that month through our well fields. Last year, 170, you can see 170 million gallons of that came from the plant. So we have the ability to pivot and do what we need to do there. Our peak high demand, 13.5 million gallons a day last year. Our groundwater rights are 22.3 million gallons a day. Surface water rights are 9.2. So if the water in the river dries up, that 9.2 may go away, but we've still got the 22.3 million gallons in water rights in the well fields. I'm not going to get super in depth on this. I know just a couple weeks ago you all had a pretty good work session on the well monitoring fields and went through all that. We picked a few data points, and is what we're seeing is that the water levels are declining in the aquifer over the last few years, and that can be variable, but that's where we're at right now. What we've started doing is some public outreach. Kind of a slow start. We're going to start ramping up though. We're working with Owen in the city manager's office. You may have seen this on Facebook a couple weeks ago. And our utility folks are working with Owen to get more and more outreach out there. So the outreach is really for targeting non-essential water users. Talking about that outdoor irrigation, hours a day, the time of day, don't have your sprinkler system going at noon, kind of basic stuff. We've been talking with Parks and Rec quite a bit about their irrigation. They're a big user in the summer. In the next few weeks, we'll be talking with some of the other large users in town. Another non-essential water use is obviously, washing your car. Maybe don't wash it every week. Maybe once a month is enough. Don't wash down your sidewalks. Use a broom, that kind of stuff. And then our community partnerships, just working with everybody in the community to bring that water use down this summer is really going to be big. And again, we're going to be meeting with those large water users. Just a couple of things on community outreach. Let the grass grow longer. Todd actually mentioned to me the other day that aerating saves a lot of water. I didn't realize that. But water at optimal times, skip the hose on hard surfaces, use a broom, delay your sprinkler startup maybe wait till June this year. Fix leaks if you got them, and adjust after rainfall. You don't need your sprinkler system running the day after it rains. I wanted to talk real quick, the next few slides, really talk a lot about Laramie Municipal Code. Laramie Municipal Code Title 13 does talk about water use restrictions. The overall authority is to the city manager. This is it's operational, right? And so we've got to have the ability to work with the city manager, sometimes on a moment's notice, to put actions in place. There's not necessarily time for us to come to city council sometimes and make those decisions. So the city manager, through ordinance, is ultimately the decision maker on water restrictions. The Laramie Municipal Code talks to the geographical scope of the restrictions, and really the gist of it is anybody connected to our water system is subject to those restrictions. So our water districts, and even if there's properties outside of the city, outside of the city and the county area that are connected, and we have some of those, they are subject to the water restrictions. So anybody connected to our system. This speaks more, this isn't necessarily in their municipal code, this is more toward the water availability plan. This is pretty standard across the U.S., what you see the different stages. I think a lot of Colorado down the front range right now is in stage 2. Stage 1's voluntary. That's kind of where we're at right now is this voluntary. We're putting out some public awareness stuff. Stage 2 really starts to limit that non-essential outdoor use. It may be that you're not allowed to water your car or wash your car in the driveway or something. Stage 3 is a near complete outdoor ban. That's when your irrigation stuff would really get crimped down. And then stage 4 is, if you're not drinking it or putting out a fire or flushing your toilet or taking a shower, don't use it, right? We don't anticipate stage 3 or stage 4 this year. We hope we don't get out of stage 1 this year. We are predicting that we may hit stage 2, but stage 3, stage 4, we're sure hoping we don't have to get there. So back to Laramie Municipal Code, how the restrictions take effect. Restrictions adopted by the city manager become legally effective upon publication in the newspaper. I think this ordinance was probably written before we had all the social media and everything, so I am sure the city manager will disseminate those restrictions by social media and other means possible. Laramie Municipal Code also has some enforcement and fees built in. You can see there $20 for the first violation, $50 for the second, so on and so forth. We sure hope we don't have to deal with that. And then beyond fines, we can discontinue service. So, if we had somebody that just, was terrible and didn't want to listen and was just watering all the time, we have the ability to discontinue their service through ordinance, and that usually gets folks' attention, and then they'll start working with us. But again, not anticipating that we'll have to deal with that. And then anything anybody's doing that threatens the fire flow, obviously, we would step in there and shut that down to ensure fire flow. There's also misdemeanor charge that gets built in for super egregious issues. Laramie Municipal Code talks about unoccupied property. So if we had an unoccupied property and that maybe they had an automatic sprinkler system that was running for 3 hours a day in the middle of the day, gives us the ability to turn the water off on that unoccupied property if we can't reasonably get a hold of those folks. So the key takeaway is really for the Laramie Municipal Code part is the city manager sets the rules. Those rules that he sets he's going to get recommendations from the utilities folks through Public Works. They're the eyes and the ears that are out there every day monitoring this stuff, looking at it, and having to adjust the treatment and distribution operations. So we'll be giving the city manager recommendations, and ultimately he sets those rules. And then the publication starts the clock. The wide geographical outreach, again, is anybody connected to the system, and then the consequences that we discussed. Overall, again, is what we want people to know is that there's going to be water coming out of your faucets all year this year, right? But we got to be real cautious. We want to make sure that we're conserving what we can and being good stewards of the aquifer. With that, I'll take questions if you got them.
Councilor O'Doherty.
When you were comparing a couple of years, I remembered that our water use has really gone down, even though population has increased, because appliances are more efficient, we have fewer leaks. So that's right, that our water use as a town has gone down.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, through you, our consumption has really gone down over the years. And I think part of it is what you said, more efficient appliances. I think a big part of it is, we had a long time there where we were doing a lot of rehab projects, and we were fixing old water lines that were leaking and cracked, and we had a lot of water loss. And I think that's a huge part of it also. And I think just generally, People want to conserve water, right? And I think over the past couple decades, that's become prominent. So I think it's multi-factored.
Can I follow up? Thank you. The smart meters that you've installed or are installing, I think that's another great opportunity to save, so water isn't wasted, and so people should know that those new meters that are going in can catch it in real time if you have a leak of, 1,000 gallons a day, that's just a toilet running. So I think that'll really help. And I was wondering if our parks have like the smart sprinklers, or if the university does, where it's actually measuring the soil moisture before putting out more water on the...
Mayor, through you, we made Director Bork come tonight, so maybe he can speak to what they're doing over there.
Honorable Vice Mayor, through you, we have been installing new control mechanisms for our irrigation system. That was actually a large project that we started last year, switching that over, if you recall. That is ongoing. It's a large system. Whether we've got the full functionality throughout the system to be measuring the moisture and things like that, not yet. But we are fully prepared, as we have done in the past, to as Director Webb has talked about, looking at being smart on where we're watering, making sure that all of our sprinkler heads are pointing at grass and vegetation, not sidewalks and concrete, things like that, and making sure that we absolutely can reduce in certain areas some of our water consumption as the city manager, whatever he determines is the right course of action. But we do have great technology as far as timing and setting them up where we're watering in the best times, which obviously is in the nighttime, overnight time, early morning, things like that. So we have some of the technology, not all of it everywhere, but we are continuing with that improvement project and are prepared to look at our water consumption reductions throughout our system. If you had any other questions, I could stay up here or let Director Webb get back.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. When I hear that our peak consumption rate is 13.5 million gallons in a day, I think we probably could go through 1 billion gallons of water a year in the city of Laramie. And my question is this: if we relied completely upon the Casper Aquifer, what is the capacity of the Casper Aquifer? Is it 2 billion, 3 billion? What is the capacity of that? And what is the recharge level? Is the recharge level at a place at so many feet where we can monitor that and say, once we drop down to a certain level, that's when we go to level 2, level 3, and level 4?
It's Jay.
Welcome.
Vice Mayor, through you. So that's a really good question, right? Because I could pull up about, just off the top of my head, 20 different well levels and give you 25 years of data, and they all will show some differences through there on aquifer decline, what that looks like. In my opinion, like we showed in the presentation, Huntoon #1 I think is a really good representation of the aquifer, simplified, right? If you want a really good look, there's 45 years at least of studies. There's 25 years of data points that the city has taken every 15 minutes, right? So from a production standpoint, the drawdown on the production wells, in my opinion, is the best trigger, because that's what affects, excuse me, I got something stuck in there. That's what affects the ability for the city to put water in your faucet. So, and that depends on where the pump is in the well, how deep, and that is different for all of the different well fields. So it was a very vague answer to a very complex question. It was about a 500-page report, the CAP, the 2023 one, that digs into this quite a bit. Not really, it deals more with the geology of it, right? But then there's a well field study on the spurs, there's well field studies on the popes, there's well field studies on the soldier. We could talk a long time about that.
Councilor Freed, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thanks, Jay. While we have you up here, I guess I came up with another question based on Councilor Shumway's questions, and I know we have some water experts in the Casper Aquifer here too, but I guess we could go into a lot of detail and looking at the different numbers of wells, but maybe to Councilor Shumway's question about, like, in this management structure that we have through Public Works and, you know, all these factors from weather to historical use to flow rates, you know, is there like I guess what I'm taking his question to be and hearing you talk about it, is there a safeguard to where we know if we're seeing low levels in the aquifer based on use and consumption that now we're outpacing the recharge rate? I guess, you know, and is that something that we can monitor? Do we have that information to say, oh man, we're pulling so much, but our recharge rate has only been this for the last 5 years. We need to really jump up our restrictions because it seems like we're outpacing the recharge.
Absolutely. And so not only will there be aquifer levels taken into place with the plan that Director Webb has talked about, it won't only be aquifer levels, right? Because it's the effect on the river. But then there's also, as Director Webb mentioned, there are other reasons of why we may have to rely on the wells or why we may have to rely more on surface water. Operational, right? If we have a failure at the water plant or we have a failure at a well field, we're under regulations on how we can produce that water. So there are multiple different reasons, and right now I cannot give you an exact level of where we meet because that's what we're working on. So we're updating those numbers, we're looking at everything. And I would also add, so there is a lot of data just on the river and on the aquifer separately, right? To do the flows that you saw that seems like a simple graph, that's every 5-minute flows in the river for 75 years. So taking those, making them averages, also cuts down some of the peaks, right? Because there's a diurnal. You'll see in one day, river shoots up, shoots down, right? So this presentation and this data, I think it's important to keep in mind. This is a very simplified version of everything that's happening in the background, right? Because we have to take into account not only water availability, the water rights, what some of our agreements for well fields, what some of the diversions at the ranch, right? Stuff like that, other diversions along the river. We have to take that all into account. And on some well fields, we have agreements that say, like spur well monitoring well 12, 8, 7, 10, and 11. There's an agreement that says if drawdown reaches this point, you can only produce this many million gallons a day. So there are many safeguards in place, not only through the city, through the state. So, again, no answer, but lots of work.
No, that was a great answer. That was a great answer. Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Great. Other questions by council or actually questions or comments? We can come back to comments, though, maybe after the public has had a chance, if that works for you all. Thank you. Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And Director Webb, I guess this is a question I know in your, I didn't have questions before today, and then you started talking, and I always get them, so I know that's why you're leaving. But, you know, the East Side Tank Project, the wet well project, the North Tank project, those are all millions or hundreds of thousands to millions of gallons that we've now captured in our system that we store, and kind of as part of this adaptive management process of water and how we move it. That's water that we have available to use and put in the system when it's needed. Or am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, Mayor, or Vice Mayor, through you, yeah, it's part of our system, right? But we use that water every day. I mean, the water's coming in and going out of those facilities every day, but it is additional storage capacity that we have within the system.
Thanks.
Councilor Shumway.
Director Webb, just a quick question. I know we have senior water rights on the Laramie River. Do we have senior water rights on the Casper Aquifer? And if we do, can we supersede the decision by the state legislature which gives University of Wyoming access at the same rate that we have access to the water?
Director Webb.
I'm going to see if Jay wants to come back up.
You did the hard part.
Go back.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So the answer to your question about senior water rights for the wells, no. But groundwater is regulated differently than surface water. So essentially, groundwater is, from a legal state perspective, is always under regulation. So for example, on the Laramie River, if there's a miracle and it starts flowing at 5,000 CFS, right, just out of the world, going down through there, instead of the 9.23 million gallons a day we could pull 20. It's called free river. So you can just pull as much as you want if the water is available, right? When it goes into regulation, you are cut back down to whatever your water right is. Groundwater, you are given, so a rate, gallons per minute, but also a volumetric cap. So you can only pull this volume out. What happens in groundwater is interference. So interference claims, and those are extremely complicated. So, again, lots of words, but no.
Other questions? I do have one, and I think you're good, Jay, don't worry. I don't think this one actually impacts you. And I believe we have, Director Webb, I think you had talked about you've already started discussions with the university to think about how, is this correct, or those are planned? To think about how we could think about being conservative together?
Yeah, Mayor, we're planning on meeting with our large water users within the next few weeks. You know, you got to think about, you know, there's the school district, and there's quite a few of them, not just the university. But we'll be setting up meetings with them in the next few weeks to start talking about conservation efforts.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for reminding me that there's more than one
you bet.
Big water user. Any other questions from council? Reed,
I came up with one last one for tonight. I was just curious about, do we have any other major agricultural users on city water? I know we have our ranches and those uses, but do we have other big agricultural draws in the city besides our ranches?
Vice Mayor, through you, I can't think of any other large agricultural users that are on the city system. I just can't think of any.
And to follow up with that, we are not haying right now, right? Hay production. We're not doing hay production right now.
And here comes Ben.
Mayor, yes, we are diverting water on the ranch to irrigate.
Okay.
The water rights out
Sure, yeah. So the water rights on the ranch are separate from, it's a different allocation of water, but they are under the same priority date. The good thing with the water treatment plant is that it's upstream of all the really bigger diversions on the system. Essentially for the ranch, if there's water left for us, we'll take up to our righted amount. If it's not there, it's not there. So.
And have there been any thoughts of reducing our production out there for this summer to conserve some more water?
So, Mayor, if we make a call on the river, and it's, as I understand, and Jay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if we make a call on the river to supply water to the water treatment plant, it's the same call. It's the same date call. If we make that call on the river, we're required to take that water. We can't make a call and then let it pass by us.
And can you explain what a call is? I don't understand. I'm not sure.
Mayor, a call is just exercising our water right. You know, it's first and right, first in use. So we have the #1 priority water right on the Big Laramie River. So essentially, when we make a call, it cuts off other users with a later priority date.
But in theory, we could reduce, we wouldn't have to make that call for the haying, or could reduce our production of hay.
Mayor, it likely wouldn't happen. The ranch's water right's about 32 CFS. Between the border and the ranch, the downland intake, there's probably 300 CFS of water rights. I think on the whole system, there's, I don't even know, it's bigger than that, but we're a pretty small number. Pioneer Canal has over 200 CFS. Even if we didn't make that call, the water would never make it to us.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Makes sense.
Appreciate it. Yep, it does. Councilor Shumway.
Well, briefly, you mentioned the Pioneer Canal. Obviously, most of the agricultural use is off the Pioneer Canal. I think that it's important for us to continue to use the water on the Monolith Ranch at the capacity that because we have to show beneficial use in order to keep our senior rights there. If it drops below a certain level, we lose the rights that we have. If we're saying, you know, we only use half of what we used historically, then that's what they're going to limit us to. So we have to be very cautious that we don't reduce the amount of water going to the Monolith Ranch, because that's water we use in the future for the city use.
Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I had a question, but it was already answered. But I would just offer comment in thinking about, you know, the council goals of like ongoing communication and community engagement, especially around the conservation efforts that will be kind of needed, albeit perhaps not enforced, that Director Webb lays out kind of at the beginning of the presentation. There's all sorts of really wonderful and fun STEM activities for students, for kids, for parents and families alike that are about conservation efforts, like teaching kids how to be drip detectives and things like that, that maybe the council can be thinking about throughout our summer engagement activities again, through farmers market, through Freedom Has a Birthday, et cetera. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Councilor Bowling. Other questions from council? Looking at you, Freed. Okay. All right. We'll move to public comment on this agenda item. Public comment. Welcome. You'll state your name for the record, please.
Chris Moody, Honorable Vice Mayor and council members. I just wanted to address some of the questions that you had. I mean, I've been mucking around the Casper Aquifer for 35 years, so it's a fairly deep knowledge that I've got in my head. realize that where your well fields are, the 700 feet of the Casper Aquifer is at those locations is completely saturated. You have 700 feet of sandstone that has water in it. Think of the aquifer as a reservoir. It's not a surface water supply that either the water is in the channel or it's not. It's an enormous vertical and lateral reservoir that contains an enormous amount of water. So when you think about recharge, when you think about the water supply, you have a long-term viewpoint to it. It's not about what's going to happen this year in that, as Director Webb said, don't panic. It's highly likely that the river will go dry this summer like it did in 2002 in July. And so you pump the aquifer as you need it. And through the years, the recharge will happen, and you can respond in accordance to your monitoring and so forth. So you just don't need to get too wrapped up in what's happening right now this summer. The water is there, and the wells are there. 2002 is a great historical marker for you folks to look at what is likely to happen this summer. The 2015 master plan has 4 technical memos in it, and there are sections that describe what happened in 2002 and with the river going dry in July and relying entirely on the groundwater system, which you're likely to be doing this summer. So the utility and all the you can look at those tech memos and pick out that information and say, what happened in 2002, what would we expect? And what happened was that in 2002, the 3-month production from the well fields was between 10 and 10.5 million gallons per day. And this goes to Councilman Shumway's question. So assuming that Mike Lido was running that groundwater resource to meet demands in 2002, the city was able to coax about 10 to 10.5 MGD out of the Soldier, the Pope, the Turner, and the Spur well fields. So that's probably a pretty good indication of what you have to meet that 13.5 MGD that was talked about. And then you have storage, and there's a lot of details in that mix as to whether the groundwater over a 3-year period can meet all of the summertime demands. So I just suggest that if anyone that's interested, go back to those tech memos, look at what happened in 2002, feel comfortable that the aquifer is there to be used, and that the infrastructure, the amount of water that you pull out of the aquifer is more limited by the design of your wells than it is the aquifer. The aquifer is not the limiting factor as to how much water the city can produce to meet demands. So, there's improvements that can be made on the infrastructure. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. I think I answered your question, Mr. Councilman Shumway, with respect to demands of 13.5 and demonstrated ability of 10.5. So we have a little shortfall, but maybe there isn't. Maybe storage takes care of it or something like that.
Thank you very much. And I am the worst timekeeper ever, so I will try to pay attention. But that was very good information, so we really appreciate it. Let's see, we've got Chris come on forward first, if you will, and then we'll move to you, Barav. Welcome.
Chris Stratton, 1569 North 6th Street. One big thing that I have is literally, I noticed that there's a statement that you guys are able to look at sprinklers and all of that coming onto the street. I hope that that is something that can be addressed with the University of Wyoming, because, last year, pretty much every night, if you wanted to wash your car, all that you had to do is go drive by the golf course a little bit slower than normal, and you can have your car washed for free. So, and in general, it rains, they're flooding their grasses. And I understand that they're not connected to the city system completely, but I would hope that you guys have jurisdiction to mandate some changes in that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, Barb.
Thanks for letting me speak again. It's good to see you again. Thank you for your service. I'll start by saying that I really appreciate what the city of Laramie has done in terms of building our infrastructure. It's amazing. It's well above and beyond what a small town like Laramie would be expected to have. So thank you. Excellent. I'm also not going to question Mr. Moody's assessment that the aquifer is here 700 feet of water. But I would like you to take a look at the long-term data. The claim that 2016 will be like 2002 is incorrect. If you look at is it possible to put up my presentation that I attached? You will see that 2015, the summer levels of the aquifer were lower than the 2002 by far, and that the high values in 2014 and 2015 were about the same as the lowest in the mid-2000s. Also, one should think about recharge, despite the fact that I agree we don't need to panic, but we need to pay attention looking forward into the future. If you look at number of years below average precipitation, we have never had 9 consecutive years below average. The early 2000s, it was only 3. So I'm asking you to look at what would we do. Please, what would we do if we have 5 more years of 2016? What is going to happen if we have 10 more years? Just as a recent climate models show, we are developing a super El Nino. It may be actually good for us because we get more rain in late summer in El Nino, but this El Nino will not come until November. So we need to think forward, and to say, we're okay, we don't need to panic, is not planning. Planning is what you've done so far, which is change from aquifer only to also rely on water, buy water rights from the Laramie River through the ranches. I'm asking that in future planning, let's look at the long-term data. Just to show you what the river looks like this year, really abnormal. If we can go to a couple more slides down, thank you. We are at 10% today. If you go one more, showing you the problems with precipitation. This is the last 5 years decline in aquifer, which is what the water department showed you in this table. But the reality is, if we look at the long-term data, which we have and should use, next slide, please. Look at what we are looking at. We have a major trend going down, and that data ends in November 2015. This year will be even worse. So please look forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sending that information along as well. Others who would like to comment, public comment, come on forward.
Sally Palmer, 715 South 11th, and I will be brief but appreciative. Overall, if there's one huge message, it would be you can propel us, you can do whatever you want to produce education. So people do not know what the aquifer is, what it does, I've been working on water issues for about 20 years, both here and in other places, but it's like we don't know. And so I want you to tell some good news about education. The principal of the Montessori school is taking her class to clean up Spring Creek. But that level of it starts here. I, again, feel in dismay at all the waste. We take water for granted. So don't forget how important it is that you're doing what you do. Because it's not just for us. And we're not isolated from other world events or other events in Wyoming. The city of Sheridan had a major problem when pollution entered their water system. I don't know if you know about that or not, but you can certainly call on the state engineers, but I won't overdo it, but please don't give up. And know how important education is for each single person that lives in Albany County. Thank you. Don't give up.
Thank you, Sally. Other folks in the audience who would like to comment on this item? Anyone online?
No one else with hands raised.
Okay. Are you sure? All of you audience people. Nobody else? Okay. All right, so we'll come back to council for comment after hearing all that great information. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say that we have absolutely wonderful water that comes out of the Casper Aquifer. I have always loved to tell people, if you want to have great drinking water, come to Laramie, Wyoming, because it's terrific. I believe that the University of Wyoming, on their flood irrigation, uses different formations than the Casper. I think they use either Forel or Sertanka. So, and it's not as good a drinking water as what we have in the Casper formation.
Other comments? Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just want to appreciate the city staff who've, been managing our water and our resources for long before I've been here. And just the confidence that I think our council shares and with our city staff for managing these resources and making sure that we have water for now and for in the future. And, I think there's a couple of topics that I think we can work on as council too, as an education component. And, I know Director Webb mentioned all the social media posts, and, our city manager has, tools in the tool belt if we need to address water restrictions. But, I think we can definitely work on how we can continue to let folks know to, not consume more than you need, and do those things that we can at an individual level. And I think, having this conversation and making sure that we're being a part of this community moving forward in the summer months where water might be tight, I think is going to be important. So I'm grateful for the community support here and the questions and comments. But I feel like we're in a good spot from the city's perspective, and making sure that we continue to have that feeling is important.
Other council members? Councilor O'Doherty. You sure? Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, city staff, for bringing this forward. I mean, you all had said, we're fine, we're good, but to see the data and see the numbers and allowing other public to come forward and, ask us to look at things, other areas to look at is so appreciated. I think I love the idea of all this education. If we could even ramp that up with some sort of, I don't know, get creative with some sort of I'm a nighttime water, I don't know what it is, some kind of campaign. I think to even improve that would be great. I am so happy to hear, because before this I came into this thinking, yes, we have water now, but what if 2 years from now we still are in a drought? What does this look like? And yes, we need to look at that data that was shared, but I also feel a lot more confidence in knowing, holy smokes, we are so lucky to have a river and an aquifer. There are a lot of places that don't have that, and so it's just, thank you for bringing all that information forward, and I think allowing us to walk away with actual data that we can share with people. So thanks very much. Other thoughts, comments? Okay, so we will close that agenda item, work session item, and we will move on to city council updates and council comments. You all are welcome to stick around for this. It's pretty riveting, but if you want to leave, feel free. Updates, who would like to start? Who's ready? Go for it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Pretty easy update for me. The only, well, there was a fundraiser last weekend. It was a bingo night. Drag Queen Bingo was amazing. They raised a ton of money for different organizations across Wyoming. I got to be a part of that with Councilor Vigil, so that was really special. And then on Friday, I got to participate in some of the waste characterization studies with Councilor O'Doherty, who was there all week last week. And I know we had other city staff. Our city manager was there. I only spent 4 hours sorting through trash, and it is wild. And, you know, Councilor O'Doherty can speak to it, and anyone else who volunteered, but just a really interesting way to see what we're putting in our landfill and what could get diverted or not. So excited to hear the study that comes from Tri-Hydro and the city from that. That's it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. For the life of me, I can't remember what we discussed at the Albany County Tourism Board last week. So I apologize for that. But then I attended last night evening the Planning Commission meeting. And I couldn't attend all of it due to family obligation, but I did attend the first hour or so with the approval of the West Side project for the URA over at the Geist property. And then they passed that last night 4-2. And so we get to vote on that next week. So.
Do you also want to update about the LCBA?
Oh, yes. Gosh, yes. So we had a membership drive for the LCBA, and dude in a zoot suit does this whole big deal, he made it fun. You know, he made it really, really fun. So we had a couple days of that, and so we had a bunch of us there volunteered to do it. People chose us, and then I found out, like I had mentioned before, that I was supposed to recruit some people too, so felt like I was in multi-level marketing, but I was able to get you there and about 5 people there, and then we were just calling people that we knew that were either already members of the LCBA, or we asked them if they could join, and Mr. Enzi was able to speak on why the importance of having a chamber, and did fantastic. Like, I think we hit our goal. I don't remember what the exact goal was at the top of my head, and our team had the most, my captain, me, the captain, and you guys all had the most registrations between new and we upgraded some people, and I got another one today. So they got hold of me today, so I was like, mention my name when you call, you know, so, but it was a good time, so I appreciate everybody that got involved, and a lot of new people signed up, and the importance of having a chamber, and the importance that Brad and his staff do for us with the legislation and things like that, trying to improve Laramie, so that was fantastic.
Councilor Newman.
I don't think I have any updates, and if I do, I'll just tell them next time.
Sounds good. Since we're just going around the table, I will go next. We had beautification. They are accepting applications from entities, kind of anyone around town, if they have a beautification project, and they just moved to increase their grant level to $3,000. I think it was $2,500 before, maybe $2,000 before. I can't remember. But they are looking at applications, and that kind of is just open at this point. And I'm not sure if there's like a closing time to that. Actually, I think it may have just closed. I'll find out, though, if you have questions or thoughts on that. The Downtown Development Authority got a great presentation from Director Tini about, and the city engineer about short-term parking, so 30-minute parking spaces in downtown. That was received well, so I think those will be kicking off here anytime soon. And then Pilot Hill, I don't know if any of you have had a chance to go out to the trailhead, but Councilor Bowling sent me a great video the other day when he was out there, but it is looking so good. And so they've made huge progress on that. And then I will say I was part of the winning team for Matt, but I did zero work. I showed up for the beginning thinking I would be getting to work, and that was all like the rah-rah time. I called no one. So I don't get to take any credit for that win, but it was fun to be there. And next to you, Councilor O'Doherty.
Yeah, so I spent the past week digging through trash, and my anecdotal report is that I think people are being pretty good about what they're recycling, because we didn't, I mean, I don't know, but it seemed to me that we weren't pulling out a lot of the recyclables. It was mostly stuff that you can't recycle, and a lot of food sometimes. But the other thing I wanted to mention about that is on the way out to the landfill every day, it's very distressing to see how many bags are blowing around. And back in 2020, we tried to do something about bags, and then the pandemic hit, and it was like, yeah, maybe not the time, but I think it's something we should look into, and maybe a beautification project. Councilor Freed was saying that the forest or the Wyoming Conservation Corps, they do volunteer projects. I think it would be cool to just have like a big army of people walking as if you were looking for a missing toddler or something, walking through and grabbing those bags and making it a public, get some videos and maybe get people to tie up their bags. That was my lesson. Okay, thank you.
I thought about once putting a giant art sculpture that just captures all the bags, and then it becomes a bag sculpture out there. Councilor Shumway.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank our city manager, Todd Fieser, for all the staff who work that they've done on the community cleanup. I'm volunteered to be at the cemetery this weekend, I think Saturday, from 9 to 2 or something like that, and I believe that they've got 200 people showing up for that, so hopefully I'll get out of there before too late. But anyway, that's the one thing I love about this community. There's so much participation in beautification of Laramie. Anyway, I also attended a fundraiser called Heart to Heart at the Harvest Church, where they had over 600 people show up for that fundraiser, and that was very, very rewarding. And I have a check for for the soup kitchen, whoever that goes to. Who do I give it to?
Yeah, we'll give it to her because she lined it up. I don't even have an invoice yet, so let's give it to the mayor. Or you can give it to me and I'll give it to you.
I'll give it, pass that on down to.
Since she's on the board. Thank you.
Okay.
Check, please.
Stop. Let's go up to Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think since last I was able to report just a few updates. The Emergency Planning Commission, we had a couple presentations, one of which was about the estimates or the considerations for fire season, which I think is inextricably linked to the drought presentation that we just saw. But some things to note, including the fact that they're kind of finding unprecedented low fuel moistures in Pole Mountain currently. This was at least at the beginning of this month. And also are able to access areas to measure fuel moistures in the snowies that have historically been inaccessible at this time of year. So just more exciting things to think about for the summer. We also had a police advisory board meeting. The presentation of that, in addition to doing an op-ed about the SPET tax and how it will affect public safety infrastructure, we also had a working session on the use of AI tools in police reporting that the LPD is currently using. And as part of that, every member of the board, basically we were watching body cam footage of a incident happening locally, And then we had to write a report by hand. And it just brings to light some of the things about the fallibility of memory, especially in reporting. And some of the actual public safety mechanisms that can be put in place by the use of AI tools in that reporting, which is also to say that it's not without its shortfalls or fallibilities or questions, but that's also something that the board is thinking critically about. And as Councilor Richardson said, everybody go check out the Hill Trailhead.
Thank you. Yeah, just to reiterate, Councilor Freed, we had a great time at bingo night last weekend, raised a lot of money for a community in need, and so that was great. And Town Gown Association is rocking. There was a proposal accepted at the International Town Gown Association Conference in Texas next month, so some folks from kind of the working group on that will be presenting in person, some will be on Zoom. So I went to a meeting just talking about what we're presenting on, and so that was kind of cool. So mostly right now it's just successes and challenges of living in a rural community, but also having 3 separate institutions, educational institutions rather, and so yeah, good stuff. Thanks.
Great. All right, so I think that is it for our updates. Anybody have any questions about the agenda for next week? Yeah, it's a...
Is there any... Number 20. Is there any way to move that forward? Just because a lot of people are going to be here for that, and I hate to have them wait for an hour and a half just to be involved in that.
Yeah, so the mayor thought about this and thought the kicker with that is if that takes up the bulk of our time, if there are so many public comments, then we're not going to be able to get through the business we've got to get through.
That makes sense.
We went back and forth on it.
I understand. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, yeah, just a kind of a, yeah, it's like a not a win-win really, either way. Yeah.
We did have Director Webb suggest if you wanted to move item 15 to consent agenda. He thought that that would be okay. I don't know how the city manager feels. I haven't been able to talk to him about that. But he said at this time, it's just authorizing the emergency work to begin for failed water main, and the money item would come at a future meeting. So
yes, please.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Couldn't council goals to go to the end? Number 17, couldn't that go to the end?
We could probably put that on the end. That should be very quick. And even if we didn't get to it right on Tuesday, that would come up again and be really quick. So not as timely as some of these other things that we've got to get to.
We've got another meeting in May too.
Okay. All right. So did you get that, City Clerk? Okay.
Yes,
so moving 17 to the end. Okay. Yep.
What about community partners? Is that another one that needs to be done at this meeting, or?
The kicker with that, though, is if we don't approve it, they don't get their money, right? We have to approve it before they get their funding?
I didn't know when it paid out or any, that was kind of my question.
Honorable Vice Mayor, I think that the community partners could be approved at a later date because the funding is based on next fiscal year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so we could actually, truthfully, if we wanted to, we could move council goals and community partners to the next meeting in May if you so choose.
Do you all feel like, I mean, that works for me.
There's 4 proclamations.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we've got a lot of proclamations, 4 proclamations. Those are going to take a while to read and to take photos.
And then youth council presentation as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor Shumway?
Vice Mayor, if we move community partners and council goals to the end of the agenda, it automatically, and we don't get to it,
It
it automatically goes to
automatically
the next
goes.
one.
That's a smart
So
idea.
put it there, because I don't think those are going to take a whole lot of
I
time.
know. Are y'all good with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
If you don't make
good
it,
idea.
you do it anyway.
Good idea, Counselor Shumway. Okay, so to recap, we are moving emergency work to consent agenda.
Yep.
We're moving community partners to number 20 to the end, and we are moving council goals to the end. Is that everything? Yep. Yep. Okay, perfect. And if we don't get to it, they just roll over to the next agenda. I like that. Council Freed.
My only question, this is Vice Mayor, was that city manager said he was going to make, really short agendas for us in 2026. So that was my only agenda review comment and question.
Perfect. Well, accountability, All right. Anything else on that? Okay. Thank you for the help on that. I think that makes that a better agenda for next week. And now we will, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn the work session and go to a special meeting.
Yeah, we can take a break. Again, let's take it. Can I get a
second?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then let's take 5 minutes and come back. It's like, and this isn't closed. This is just regular, right? Yep. All right. So we are back to it. To read the notice, city clerk?
I'm happy to, if you'd like.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Notice is hereby given that a work session and special meeting of this Laramie City Council will be held Tuesday, April 28th, 2026 at 6:00 p.m. at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Council Chambers, and via Zoom for the following purpose. Work session with number 1, Ned Log property update, number 2, citywide parking task force development, number 3, water planning, where are we, what's unknown and what's ahead, number 4, City Council updates and council comments. Number 5, agenda review. The special meeting call to order, number 1. Number 2, roll call. Number 3, public comment on non-agenda related items. Number 4, resolution 2026-28, budget amendment for fiscal year 2026. And number 5, to adjourn.
Thank you. City Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Bowling.
Here.
Freed.
Here.
Lockhart.
Here.
Newman.
Here.
O'Doherty. Here. Shumway.
Here.
Behill.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
And Cumby absent. That's 8 present and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Come on up, Director Wade, please. Oh, sorry. Public comment. Thanks for keeping me in line. Any public comments? Okay. Now to you, please. Oh my gosh. Yes, please, and also that. Motion, please. We just got done talking about this.
I move to approve Resolution 2026-28, amending fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026 biennial budget of the City of Laramie, Wyoming, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second. Second by Hill, moved by Newman, and now, after 3 tries, to you, Director Wade.
Good evening, Honorable Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. First and foremost, I am so sorry about this special meeting for this item, but if I'm going to practice what I preach, I needed to call a special meeting, and this was important to me. And so on April the 6th, I notified our trustee for the 2018 SPET bonds that we needed to call that issue. The next debt service payments are due on June the 15th, and we have to give our bond trustee notice in a certain amount of time to call these bonds. And so on the 6th, I sent this letter. I heard nothing, checked back, and they confirmed they received it. And then last Friday, I got an invoice that said we had to have payment to them by the 30th. And while we had normal debt service payments budgeted for the year, because we were uncertain about the timing of the final SPET tax collections, we actually need to amend the budget upward to be able to call all of these bonds. You may recall hearing me talk about the reason I was holding these bonds for as long as I could. One issue, we had a 0.92, that's a 0.92% interest rate. The other issue, we were at a 1.06, and the treasury rate right now, what I'm earning on funds is about 3.8%. And so it really benefited us to hold on to this debt as long as we could. But the IRS has some regulations around arbitrage that really make it, not very advisable for us to hold the debt beyond this point. And so we need to call all of those bonds. We are bound in timing, so we do need to get this out the door. And to be really honest with you, I thought we'd be making this payment around June the 1st, and I thought I'd be bringing this budget amendment in May. But the timing is what it is, and tonight you're being asked to amend the budget by $5,103,076 to allow us to call the rest of these bonds. This amendment will be funded entirely by, of course, cash on reserve and restricted for bonded debt service. And that's a great pointer for how it works with the SPET tax. So over the entire life of the collection of the tax, what we're doing is we're setting money aside for the bonded collection of this tax, and that's been managed for a very long time. And so these funds are in hand. There's no problem with that. And I'm simply asking for permission to amend the budget so I appropriately expend these funds when we call the bonds. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Wade. Questions? Councilor Doherty.
I don't really understand what call the bonds means.
Through you, Vice Mayor, if it's okay. To call the bonds means we are going to redeem the outstanding bonds. And so we sell bonds, typically to banks. And to redeem them means we're going to say, hey, we no longer want this debt to be outstanding. And so when we negotiate these debt agreements, there are call provisions that happen typically after year 7, because the banks want to make sure that they earn a certain amount of interest for a certain amount of time to make it worth their money based on what they know at the time, right? Make it a good deal for them. And so there are callable provisions built into both of these debt agreements, which allow us after that fixed date to redeem all of these if we want to quit having the bonds be outstanding or quit paying interest, depending on what maybe is the situation we're in.
Other questions? I have one. And so we are calling these bonds because in the last specific purpose excise tax, we had bonded. And because that is complete, now we need to call the bonds back.
Vice Mayor, that's correct. Because collections are fully completed, IRS regulations say that we really need to call these bonds because to hold them would be to our financial advantage, and that is really frowned upon for a tax exempt bond.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Comments? Councilor Newman?
Thanks for all your work on this, and I'll tell you, when I got the Finance Committee email, and I'm like, holy moly, that's a lot of money for me to say yes to. But it makes sense why we have to. So I appreciate all your work on this.
Councilor Doherty. Okay, other comments? Thank you very much for being on top of this and not making us illegal.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please. Oh, gosh, my gosh. Public comment.
Public comment.
Really trying to get us out of here. Sorry, you guys. Okay, now, roll call, please.
Bowling.
Aye.
Freed.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Vigil.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Cumby, absent. That's 8 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. All right, that has passed, and now we are on to adjournment, I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Nothing else, right? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will adjourn 8:32.